Right, so we're going to kick off, sadly, on let's say a slightly gloomy note, right? We're going to have to look, we're journalists. We have to tell the story no matter what, right? Good or bad. If it bleeds, it leads sort of stuff. So we're opening with a bit of a discussion about the rather gloomy state of crypto markets right now, and in particular, the fallout from the rather ugly collapse of Terra's stablecoin UST, just to lay the stage. But I'm pretty confident this panel that I've got coming in here are going to be able to give a nice optimistic take on where it all goes, a bit of a silver lining, if you like. So please welcome to the stage Rumi Morales, Mark Yusko, and Jordi Alexander. Alrighty, so this is a little bit contrived, I've got to say. I mean, the reality is that these three guys are all seasoned financial professionals, but when we pulled this together, we thought, how do we get the spirit of consensus, right? There is the retail investor, which occupies that whole degen mindset, and they're into YouTube, and they do all of their trading over Twitter, and then there's the institutions, the professionals, and so forth. And I think you guys actually probably cross both of them, but I think they're going to play roles to a certain. But Jordi Alexander, a huge success on YouTube for his predictions and his analysis of where markets are, is going to play the degen role. He's appropriately wearing the hoodie over here. Mark Yusko from Morgan Creek, long time history in I mean, I'm not trying to say you're that old.
That's a nice way of saying I'm old.
He's old.
Okay, I got gray hair, yeah. Old. I'll be the old guy.
You're playing the older guy here. So, a lot of long time in financial markets, a real veteran, so he'll give you that financial perspective. And you kind of cross everything here,
a little bit, as the ecosystem person,
exactly.
I guess. Yeah.
So, listen, I think, Jordi, I'm going to throw to you first, because you were out there before a bunch of people saying, hey, watch out, Terra's going to go. I don't know, maybe walk through a little bit about what that was, but really what I want to go through as quick as we can is to a take on where does it go from here, and what are the lessons that we take from that?
Yeah, so Terra was an experiment, and what we've seen in crypto is a lot of times experiments are treated as something that has a 100% chance of success. We see this even with something like a layer one like Solana, which has been kind of in beta mode, keeps starting and stopping, and the retail hype is that this is the next big thing, and ultimately retail, if you look at the pulse and you look at what's happening, the killer app for retail is always get rich quick. That is undoubtedly what drives human motivation the most. And what we saw with Terra was this sort of flywheel effect that was very risky, because as it was growing, what was also growing was the asset liability mismatch between what the thing was promising was going to pay out and how much reserves it actually had. And behind that, you have a founder who was extremely charismatic, not just with retail, but also with institutional. So he managed to really create a sphere of influence around him that had some of the biggest names in the space. And unfortunately, a lot of the retail doesn't have time to spend hours and hours and weeks like I did in terms of going through the documents and understanding what's really going on. And they just sort of blindly follow Alameda or some of the big names that Jump, whoever was behind it. And unfortunately, because we're in this experimental phase, a lot of people have not done the work to actually understand the solid financial mechanics behind it. And the reality is, even though crypto is a relatively new space and finance has been around for thousands of years, we can't just ignore the lessons of what we've learned for all that time and just assume that this is a new thing and the laws of gravity don't apply anymore, because what we found out is they do, and what goes up has to come down if it's not built properly.
Mark, what do you...
Look, I think it's ironic a little bit that Luna went to Terra, right? And that, I mean, that's just reality, and maybe it was not intentional. I think to Jordi's point, the challenge is we've seen this movie before. CDOs were dumb, and making them in a faster, more liquid way is double dumb, or dumb squared. And so this idea of calling it a stable coin when there was nothing stable about it, it was an unstable coin to start, and as Jordi said, the more successful it became, the more vulnerable it became. And we've seen that over and over in financial innovation. And at the end of the day, there's not that many things that we can do to get rich quick. In fact, there aren't very many at all. And this idea that we should embrace community leaders or influencers just because they're charismatic, I think is very, very dangerous.
But there are lessons in this, Rumi, and you've also seen this rodeo a couple of times. And the DCG in particular, I think, is interesting that you're running venture there, and it's placed a lot of bets on a range of different companies with the view that there's this long-term build-out of things. And we're going into this winter, it seems, and that sounds ominous, but in my view, 2018 was one of the best times in crypto, 2018, 2019, because in that lull period, some of the most important technological advances were made. So from your perspective, as somebody who's got big stakes in all of that, what are your lessons, and where do things go from here?
It's a lot of opportunity. It always will be. I've been a little bit nostalgic at this consensus conference. I remember my first one had 250 attendees just 7 years ago. I think 17,000 people got tickets for this one. So I recognize as well, it's really maybe a little daunting to be confronting some of these markets as they exist currently. But guys, there's only one way, right? And you're gonna have lots of ups and downs a little bit, but it's all been pointing towards up. And in terms of the opportunities for you as entrepreneurs to build a startup, right? For you as investors to support those entrepreneurs, the level of innovation here is unlike anything I've seen as a venture capital investor now for 20 plus years. Yeah. And so fundamentally optimistic, always have been, always will be in this space.
What are you looking for, Jordi? What do you think are the big opportunities here, and what's the most exciting stuff on the horizon?
I think even though we've had a lot of things fail, there's a lot of learning from the failure, and people like me and other people who really like to study these things, we're looking at a lot of these experiments like Olympus DAO, like Terra, like these other ones. It's not a pure failure. Obviously, it first did really well. So we first, I'm analyzing, I'm saying, what are the pieces of it that catch attention, catch millions of people? With Terra, for example, it was Anchor. Anchor was a savings protocol. It was a DeFi protocol like we have many others, but it was so simple. All you did was just deposit, and it would just give you yield. It was a savings account. That was kind of showing me that if we give retail something very simple they can use and not need to spend a lot of time understanding, that will do really well. And then, of course, with failure, you also understand the lessons that you need to avoid and evolve. And this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants, we're going to stand on the shoulders of giant mistakes. There have been huge mistakes made, and the lessons are very, very valuable. So I'm very excited to see the next step forward, especially with DeFi. It's a space that I follow very closely. I think, I put a thing on my Twitter account yesterday just to ask my followers, who do you think is going to be the next person to create the next leap forward? Because obviously we've kind of hit the ground a little bit. And I said, do you think it's going to be kind of like Wall Street Bets, Degen Anons? Is it going to be like, boomers like Mr. Wonderful who are going to kind of find like the new way forward? Is it going to be like very young kids in college? I actually think the thing I'm very excited about, there's so many finance professionals that have left traditional finance jobs. They have experience in banks and hedge funds. They've done it really, really well. And they've been drawn into the space by the creativity that it allows them. And I think the talent drain will be the next people that will innovate forward. And I'm really curious to see for the next few years what all that brain that the space has acquired will do.
I feel, sorry, I was going to say, I feel kind of like a historian on this panel. But you had brought up, Mike, earlier the 2018 crypto winter and everything, since then. There was no big DeFi. The DeFi summer came after that. Mm-hmm. There was no talk of metaverse or NFTs so much back then. That's all just been in the past few years. Yeah. So I'm really excited about this time to see what innovation comes next. And I'm sorry,
No. I was just going to agree violently that, again, I've been around a long time, just a nice way of saying old, but I've been through all these cycles in venture. The best opportunities in venture, bar none, are in the wintertime. And winter, one thing it does is it kills off the bad stuff. And there was a whole bunch of bad stuff in this last cycle that needed to die. And part of the problem in the traditional world that I came from is we don't let things die, right? I'm wearing the shirt, keep calm, we'll print more. They're going to print so much money over the next 9 to 12 months to try to save this dying traditional financial system that has been over-levered and kind of turned into cronyism and kleptocracy. That's a whole reason that I came here. You know, I got introduced to crypto the same time as the Winklevoss twins. They're on a rock and roll tour, and I'm not, because I didn't get it in 2013. But we launched Morgan Creek Digital in 2018, in the middle of winter, but we made some of the best investments because it was easy. Because what happens in winter, people get displaced. And that feels bad, but it's actually wonderful, because then people are motivated to build and create as opposed to ride the hype cycle. And I go all the way back to the beginning of Web 1. Web 1 is the area under the curve linearly above the x-axis. And that created a lot of wealth. Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, okay? Then we have Web 2. That's the knee of this exponential curve. And that is bigger companies like Alibaba, Netflix, Apple, and networks, multi-trillion-dollar companies. Now we're going to go parabolic in the growth areas. And people can't do math. 2 times 2. 4. 17 times 23. I'll wait. I'll wait. That is the limit.
Some math poly.
That is the limit of human intelligence. People can't do that without a calculator. So how are you at exponential math? If I take 20 linear steps, I'm halfway across the room. If I take 20 exponential steps, I go around the world twice. Exponential growth is the greatest superpower in the world. And all of you in this room and all the people that Jordi was talking about that are coming into this space, I've seen a lot of talent migrations. I've never seen anything like this. The talent migration into this space, into crypto broadly, into Web3, whatever we want to call it, is like nothing the world has ever seen. And I did a conference right before the lockdown, and a kid came up to me afterwards and says, "Will you call my mom?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you were up there saying that this is where we should all go, and my mom thinks I'm an idiot. I left this big law firm." I said, "Yeah, let's go call your mom." So we called his mom and told him that he was not an idiot, and he's doing great, and he actually is doing really great. So
there you go. So, I mean, it's not, though, and also it's not linear, it's not exponential, there's also obstacles, right? I mean, it's not automatic, I suppose is the right way to put this. You know, it doesn't just happen automatically. There are issues that need to get resolved as we go forward, and this is one of the things I think consensus is important, because it's a place for all these things to get hashed out. But I want to drill down actually into regulation, right? Because when you talk about these guys who are leaving the old Wall Street, joining crypto, the financial professionals, and the same sort of people who are looking at this and saying, "Ha ha ha, we know this. We did this in in the year 2000 with the dot-com bubble. You guys, there's nothing new here." And so there's a cynicism that is certainly emerging amongst some of the old establishment, and there's also, it seems a bit of a backlash, right? The rhetoric that's coming from regulators is rather feisty. There's a lot of debate out there, and I suppose the issue is there a real risk? And Rumi, maybe you can weigh in on this. That is going to act as a roadblock, and how do we get through those issues? Do we need favorable regulation to move forward, or can all of these tremendous innovators and entrepreneurs just find a way around it all?
Maybe people think I'm way too sunny and happy, given the way markets are right now. I have never been more bullish on good regulation in this industry than I am today. Okay. From, again, remembering the way things used to be. What we've seen around the world from many regulators in different jurisdictions as fundamentally, I think for the most of them, an acceptance that innovation in the space is a good thing, right? You want sensible regulation, but you don't want to dampen the innovative entrepreneurial spirit of people who really do want to improve things for the economy and for their livelihoods. So I was very heartened by, for example, even in Washington, D.C. with the Biden executive order, it led with innovation, and I thought that was a very positive step. Now, though, going back to Terra, and I think in emerging economies, though, I'm a little bit more watchful. I think Korea has been an interesting case where we had recently a very pro-crypto president elected following what happened with Terra, and Do Kwon is Korean. Now the South Korean regulators are like, oh, crypto exchanges, you need to watch out. So there's been a whipsawing for, I think, regulators who are trying to understand the space, but fundamentally, they're supportive of innovation. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I'm really glad.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah, I'm still really glad you mentioned the emerging market story, right? Because as much as there are, these pendulum swings in places like Korea, but I mean, actually, be honest, South Korea is by no means an emerging market country these days. It was a major faux pas there. It used to be.
Still in the emerging market index.
It's still in the index, which is
whatever reason.
ridiculous, right?
Ridiculous.
And maybe we're just you and I showing our age here. We still tend to think in these terms. But ultimately, the international aspect of crypto, I think, is one of the most important and certainly in the United States, expressed stories, because we tend to be a bit myopic here. And there really is enormous opportunity. I want to call out Rhonda Eldridge over here, who brought a team of Bahamian kids on a boat to join us here, along with developers. It's just a sign of the dedication that's happening in all sorts of places around the world to learn and be part of all of this. So I want to talk a little bit about, we talk about this exponential growth, Mark, and all these huge opportunities that happen from an investor point of view. But what about the opportunities for the little guy? There is actually a lot of payment solutions that are being developed in places like Nigeria and everywhere else. So, Jordi, what's your view on how it's actually being used by people on the ground and why that matters to the big story that Mark is pointing us to here?
So I think, crypto generally can be broken down into things that are trying to become money or our money, or things like Bitcoin, for example, and then all the use cases around it where the technology is more important. So you have scarcity on one side, and then you have kind of the technology and the trustlessness. So in terms of the benefits to consumers, there's a lot of benefits in reducing costs, making transactions a lot simpler, being able to send money around the world without crazy bank fees and intermediary banks. I try to send money to Singapore, and it's like, which is the bank that's the intermediary bank of the intermediary bank, and everyone's charging like $100 along the way. So that's no-brainer, needs to happen. I think countries generally are in favor of that. Of course, some of the financial institutions are fighting, this is like a moment where they try to keep their cash cows going. Eventually that'll die out. But what I'm seeing is, I'm from a small country called Cyprus, and I go there and I see the same thing as I see in other countries, which is you have two segments. You have, the ECB segment, which is kind of Cyprus is also part of the ECB, and they are very much anti-crypto because what they see is competition for the ability to print money, like the CBDC concept. We saw this in China as well last year. As soon as they're about to launch a CBDC, they want to squash everything else and keep that monopoly. And then on the other hand, you have the government at large, the ministers of innovation, of digital. They want to bring all the activity and the brain space and everything. So I think for the little guy, in the end, it will definitely create a lot of opportunities for new products to use. We'll have much better options, apps on our phone. A lot of new killer apps will come out of this. And then, the big fight is happening ongoing on the money side. And we saw with Wall Street Bets, if a lot of retail, goes in the same direction, punches the same way, they can fight back. When it comes to CBDCs, it is a geopolitical game where certain countries, like in the Middle East, we're seeing flared gas is a new way you can mine Bitcoin. For example, the Middle East will probably stay quite pro-Bitcoin because it's in their favor. They are, in comparison to other countries, able to take advantage. And places like Europe might come out very harshly against it.
Look, Michael, this is the point, right? This is a technological innovation that is not going away. And it is a global phenomenon. 40% of the people in the world don't have a bank account. 40% of the people in the world don't have a bank account. So how can that be? Well, that whole migration from the internet to the mobile net to the trust net, where we have a single source of truth and we have the ability to transfer value anywhere in the world. The internet made information bidirectional for the first time. The trust net, as I call it, makes value bidirectional. That's what blockchain technology does. And it is going to be pervasive, and it's the greatest wealth creation opportunity we will ever see, for sure in my lifetime. And what's cool about this is it is inevitable, and it's starting in these other places, but we have this American exceptionalism that everything starts here. Not even close. The bulk of the activity is outside, and the bulk of the huge, for example, if I had a mother-in-law in El Salvador, which I don't, she's in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but if I did and I wanted to send her $1, she would get 70 cents worth of pesos because Western Union takes a piece and the Bank of International Settlements takes a piece because the Rothschilds signed a deal 400 years ago that still applies. Ridiculous. If I use Strike, which we're investors in, if I use Strike, I send her $1, she gets 100 pesos. okay? No loss. Now, 0 is the wrong number. There needs to be some cost for that at some point, and Jack will figure out a way to monetize. But that innovation is not going to stop because we went 20 years of fintech. There's no tech in fintech. We took old payment rails, ACH, Fedwire, and put a nice UI, UX, and we took stuff out of banks onto apps, and we gave them large market caps, but that's not technological innovation. What y'all are doing is technological innovation. We are creating the future of finance, the future of money. And the idea that this is somehow going to go away is such nonsense, it just makes me angry. Anyway.
Yeah, I've always thought rather than fintech, what we are doing is tech-fin. It's technological finance.
Oh, amen.
Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful.
But Rumi, what we're talking about here is a massive disruption, and disruption implies clash, conflict. And just listening to Mark, I keep thinking a line I've been using for some time about why, and I use it when I try to pitch to young journalists to come and join CoinDesk. And I say, look, the reason why this is a story that you should get involved in is because it is the biggest change in money in 500 years.
5,000.
Well, okay, 5,000, but I would suggest that the Medici, when they introduced double entry bookkeeping and they created this banking intermediary system for how we actually move
100%.
money around. But yes, gold maybe is,
No, 100%,
is also.
100%. Yep.
So 5,500, pick your number. Point being, it's massive. But 500 years of entrenched power is a huge, enemy, if you like, or at least challenge to get over. How does this all play out?
I think we have to realize, while it's a big change for money, it's a change for much more than just money, for our mindsets. What does it mean to work in a company when you have these DAOs now? Like, what does it mean where you have the access to your data? So if you right now take a picture of your taco, your breakfast taco, as the mayor was talking about, post it in Facebook, are you getting compensated for that? That's your picture, that's your IP, shouldn't you? Right? This world enables that for you. Yep. You have to let go of concepts around centralization, whether it's in your company or your currency, and then also realize it's not just about financial services, but media, entertainment, gaming, all the brands now in this space. That's what I'm so excited about. But more than disrupting money, you're disrupting mindsets. Yep. And that's why there's a lot of future here.
Yeah, a lot of future, right? Those ideas are big, and those ideas are exciting. And when you sort of go down the rabbit hole, you imagine this world, and you can just see the disruption. But at this stage of the game, a lot of it is still talk, right? I mean, we've certainly got companies working in this space, but they're not properly decentralized, and there's huge scaling problems, and the UX is really difficult.
That's the awesome part. So 2 quick things. So on the NFT thing and the futures, you all heard the Crypto Boy song? Actually very catchy, as good as Skater Boy. Awesome. I actually went on TikTok and I composed. I didn't record it because my daughter wouldn't let me. But the whole thing, she doesn't want to hear about the NFTs, right? But if she took that song, which kicks, it is millions and millions of clicks, and she turned it into an NFT, she would be getting to the moon instead of ByteDance going to the moon. Second thing on the fighting. Look, the banks have had a good 800-year run. The Medici is awesome. JP Morgan, the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergs. Do Bilderberg.com tonight. Look at that online. But it's been awesome for them. But it's over. And this is the Gandhi quote that Gandhi didn't say. First, they ignore you. 2009 to 2015, they ignore us. We're a bunch of nerds and geeks playing with this stupid stuff. Then they laugh at you. So 2016 to 21, a bunch of nerds and geeks playing with this magic internet money. Ha, ha, ha. Now they fight you. We are in the then they fight you phase. 2022 to 2027, and the fight is going to be a bitch. They are going to fight hard because it's 7 trillion. Okay, someone shudder when I use the T word. 1 trillion. Okay, lock the doors. You guys sit here with me for 31,710 years and spend $1 a second. That's 1 trillion. $7 trillion of wasted money in the system, the current system that you described, is going to go away, and it's going to flow to all of the entrepreneurs and innovators in this room and around the world. And that is magical, but the banks don't want that. They do not want that, and they're going to fight so hard. But more regulation is good. Regulation sets ground rules. Like if you have kids and you don't have a curfew, they will get in trouble. They need boundaries. More regulation will increase adoption, will increase use cases. Anyway, I digress.
Okay, Jordi, like a lot of big
Yeah.
talk here, and Mark's doing a great sales pitch. Let's give him that. But you know, like you've been really good here at sort of grounding our realities and saying, guys, you know, there is such a thing as gravity. You know, and so like, how do you look at this? Like, are we at risk again of overhyping? And what do we need to do to actually make sure that these systems work and become something that the average person can use and feel comfortable with?
I mean, we're getting a lot of headlines that are sometimes bad when things blow up because a lot of people like to point that, oh, this is not working. I told you so. I told you crypto was bad. Look at this headline. People lost money. The reality is we have to go through all these experiments, and a lot of these things have to happen outside of regulation. If the US is going to be extremely tough on regulation, people will just do it abroad because, you know, the SEC does not have any jurisdiction over what happens, you know, in Africa or in Australia or somewhere else. Ultimately, if people want to try to do things, it's going to be a lot of harsh lessons we're learning. We iterate. At some point, there is a concept of a global casino which we have to acknowledge. We can't just pretend it's not there. There are people who love gambling. They just want to do that. You know, there's a huge, I just came from Vegas, so, you know, that's a very booming industry for a very long time. At the same time, crypto has presented this opportunity for people to just gamble on things, and people know that sometimes they're putting money in worthless items. It's like a pump and dump, and they just, you know, they all put their money in a box. We have this concept of the box all the time. People will stuff money in the box, and then they hope that they're going to take out more than they put in. And of course, the reality is not everybody can take out more than they put in. So these games are starting to get figured out. I think eventually only people who want to play for entertainment will play it, and that's totally fine. Other things that we're figuring out are for DAOs, for example. It's something super interesting from a game theory standpoint is DAOs are also this type of thing where people are kind of putting in their effort together in a box. And what we've seen now is examples where people are complaining that, you know, you haven't done enough work compared to the rest of us. We saw this recently with Merit Circle, for example. You know, you said that you were going to invest and then you're going to help, you know, bring business, and you didn't do anything, and now we want to take you out. And how do we resolve that? You know, it's kind of what you said, Mark, like there have to be some ground rules. We have to accept that if it's a total free-for-all, what ends up happening from a game theory standpoint is everybody just decides, I'm going to do what's best for me, not what's best for everybody else, and then things sort of collapse. And we have a lot of that in crypto. There's a lot of people who, they just care about their one coin. And, you know, sadly, it goes all the way to the top, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, a lot of people just want the other one to die, which is very sad. I think like they should collaborate.
Yep. It's a tribalism, right, Rumi? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, we all suffer it. It just seems like this obsession with my coin, and they're sort of very narrow. The only truth that exists is, you know, such and such coin. And it's like, if that one fails, that's good for me. You know, how do we get through this? This is really
It's
kind
tough.
of
It's
toxic.
human nature. It's not just crypto. It's politics. It's
Right.
religion. So it really takes an active effort on our part for everyone, whether you're institutional, retail, ecosystem, to admit that you got to let some of that go if you truly want this to be the opportunity that we know it all can be for us. Some of the tribalism has to go, and that means fighting against your own human nature. Because I think in other industries and other institutions, we see this again and again. Tribalism is a fact. We've got to make an effort to overcome that fact.
Yeah, and how do we do that, though, Mark? I mean, how do we coordinate? Yes.
I think part of the problem is there are 4 types of participants in markets. There are investors, you know, that actually want to build things. There are traders that don't care about things. They just want to make money long or short. There are speculators, which take the opposite side of a hedger. Like when an oil producer sells their production forward, the speculator comes in and buys the long side. Then the problem is there are degenerate gamblers. And what happened is we locked people down. We took away Vegas. We took away sports. We gave them free money. And then they started speculating in crypto. Now, they used to speculate in stocks, and they still do, GameStop and that nonsense. And that's stupid. And Dogecoin is stupid. There's just no there, okay? No, but it's not, and it'll make me unpopular, and people tweet at me now, but whatever. It's stupid, but there are plenty of things that aren't stupid. And the builders are going to build, and we are going to create this ecosystem together. But the tribalism is human nature. How do we get rid of it? Time.
last word, since he pointed you and said the degenerate gambler. I don't know that that's actually you, Jordi. It's that you were referring to them.
No, he was
but you
referring
are
to them.
playing the
That's how-
degen
no.
role, so
No,
maybe
no.
a quick last word from you.
I mean, I think, just to present the degen side, obviously, we want people to come into the space. We want to go to billions of users. We have to keep things exciting, not just like very boring and, traditional. A lot of the work has to happen with designers, UX, UI, just making things like very nice to look at, very simple to use, and a lot of the talent that comes into the space, I hope will just create the user experience so that a lot of people get brought in and use these like really cool things we're building.
Alrighty. So we're going to leave it at that, folks. Thank you so much. A tremendous conversation. A round of applause for this panel, please. Good stuff. Thank you so much.